I cannot imagine under any circumstances that any right-minded person would find it acceptable to support or to even acknowledge that there was justification in any way for the massacre of innocent civilians on October the 7th. If I'm confirmed, I will be absolutely clear to carry the president's policies. They have been clear that Hamas will have no future in Gaza. It can't. This was not simply a cold-blooded murder in which people came across the borders and shot innocent people. They massacred them. And they did it in the way that was most physically painful and in the way that was most personally humiliating. And worse, they videotaped themselves doing it because they were proud of it, and they published it with pride. And they announced repeatedly that they would do it again. Hamas is not a government, it's not a standing army, it is a terrorist organization, and they acted like it. And they must be treated as such.
Everything is now being framed in a spiritual language that this is a war against the Jewish people in the chosen land. And that's the way we need to see this. And if Israel starts seeing itself as the chosen people in our chosen land, then we can start talking about real victory.
When do we see this confirmation happening? I know that it keeps being pushed off, but
just talking about Huckabee, I wanted to say, I feel like he is a living representation of someone from the nation saying, look at what God has done for you. Yeah. I mean, he's the first non-Jewish ambassador in years, right? Or a couple decades or something like that. I think this is amazing. Like we know we played music with Governor Huckabee in the Tagot Winery like 15 years ago. He has like a record of strong support for Israel, including sovereignty in Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria. And I think it's just amazing.
Well, what makes him even more powerful is it's not politically, he's not licking his finger, putting his finger in there to see what does everybody else think about Israel right now. Let's do that. His support for Israel, from personal experience with him, is based on his faith, which makes it so much deeper. And it's exactly what you're saying. It comes from a biblical root that's deep in him that will not be shaken.
But I want to make it clear, when he said any right-minded person, he's right. Meaning people who look at Israel and what we're facing and what we've endured and the jihad and the vicious, evil, sick, twisted, perverse terrorism that we're facing and fall on the other side, there's a reason for that. It's not like, well, Huckabee's a religious man and, well, they're secular, so they say, no. They're just as religious. They're just coming from a very different, darker theological place. The Tucker Carlsons and the Candace Owens, they are coming from it's a deep-seated theological replacement theology in which the downfall and devastation of Israel confirms what their belief system is, which is that God rejected the nation of Israel. And so they're coming from just as religious a place as Pastor Huckabee is. The only difference is he's being forthright and honest about it. And they're just acting like, oh, it's because of the occupation and the this and the that and the nonsense, and they're not actually saying what it really is. Maybe it's because they're not consciously aware of it, but I think that to some degree they are, and they're just not coming forth at this whole thing, both sides. This is a spiritual war on every front. On every front. Some people are just more conscious and aware of it and honest about it, and others aren't.
But you see, when the Jewish leadership, like the deep state, like Ronen Bar, like the Attorney General, and they say, let's just not turn this into a religious war. And then you have the ambassador of America saying, this is about the Jewish people and we will stand against the forces that are against the Jewish people. It's not an Israeli thing. It's a Jewish thing. It forces us to realign ourselves with the truth. And when he says right-minded, King Solomon says, Rashit Chochmah Yirat Hashem. The beginning of wisdom is the fear of God. Once you take God away from society, once you take God away from family, then men become women and women become men, and then you've lost all right-mindedness. And so what's being brought back here is just simple common sense and morals and truth. People massacred Jews and broadcasted on the internet. That's evil. Who was the orchestrator of that? Iran. And that's what's happening now.
Are you planning to celebrate Passover this year? If so, we have a great resource that'll help you celebrate the feast and deepen your understanding of Passover. It's a Passover Haggadah guide created just for Christians. This guide is a unique blend of Jewish tradition and the Christian faith, and it makes it perfect for families who want to celebrate Passover and discover the deeper significance of your faith while at it. Has designated readings for leaders and participants. Each person can walk through the Passover Seder. You can learn together about the meaning behind each part of the Seder, discover the powerful symbolism behind the matzah and the wine, connect with the true significance of this feast. It's an easy to follow guide, ensures a meaningful educational experience for the whole family. We even have an accompanying children's Haggadah book that goes hand in hand with the regular guide and has beautiful illustrations for your children. They'll love coloring each page while getting to learn about this meaningful festival. You guys want to order your copies today. Make this Passover an unforgettable experience for everyone at your Seder table. We are running low on inventory, and Passover is only a couple of weeks away, so click the link in the description below to get the Passover Haggadah for Christians and the accompanying children's book today.
I think it's worth mentioning, I don't know if this is too much of a deep dive into the spiritual DNA of what we're challenged and faced with here in Israel, but when we left Egypt, in Exodus chapter 12, it says, "And also a mixed multitude, an Erev Rav, went up with them, and flocks and herds and very much livestock." And this was a mixture of the Egyptians that came with Israel. And there's a belief today that this establishment, this deep state in Israel, it's also a religious belief. And I have some of them as cousins and family, and I see that it's a religious belief that their dedication and their commitment is to curry favor among the nations of the world, to be accepted by Europeans and by the cosmopolitan elite. You know, it says that there's a few qualities: promoting assimilation and discouraging Torah observance. That is a characteristic of the Erev Rav, of the mixed multitude. Redefining Judaism in a way that removes God and removes the commandments and removes moral commitments and says, Tikkun Olam, we're here to fix the world. They don't actually quote the rest of the verse, Tikkun Olam b'malchut Shaddai, to fix the world in the name of God. And they just say, fix the world, that's why we're for trans LGBT rights. We're trying to fix the world, as if that exact antithesis of biblical values is fixing the world. It's a distortion and a twisting, and so we're facing that challenge and that battle internally here in Israel.
Well, I'll tell you what's so beautiful about that is that in the prophecies of the final war of Gog and Magog, it says that there will be Jews that join Gog and Magog and attack Israel. And then as that's happening, there will be righteous among the nations that stand alongside Israel. And
Who says that?
That's what it says in Zechariah. That's what it says in Isaiah. That's just what's going to happen.
Right.
And so it's not a Jewish thing, and it's like a God thing.
Yeah.
So the people that stand with God will all unite, and the people that are against God will all unite.
Right.
And it's not about the Jews in Israel, the Jews outside. The Jews in Israel sometimes are our worst enemy. And so that's now falling apart as something new is being born. And that's really exciting to me.
So how did the international supporters come in? You're saying that, obviously
it's an encouragement
circles
for us, because we're sitting here as those from the nations. There's obviously hundreds of thousands of people watching and listening every week from the nations, and it's encouraging to know that
you guys
it's
have
our
always
decision.
Been. You guys have always been that. You guys have always been the tip of the spear in the manifestation of these righteous of the nations that are going to come and love Israel in a selfless way and bless Israel in a selfless way. That it's happening in huge masses now. I mean, huge relatively. It's still a remnant, but you guys have been leading.
Can I ask a question to the rabbis in regard? I think everyone that's out in the nations right now, they're hearing us talk every week, and the world is in a really volatile state. And they're not Jewish. They're like, Luke and I, and they're sitting in places all over the world, literally. The channel we're reaching people from every pocket across the globe. And these people that love Israel, they know the redemption process is in play. The Jewish people are coming back to their homeland. We're seeing the ancient ruins being restored. The land is coming back to life. The agricultural cycles are coming back. Like all the pictures of the redemption that the prophets all spoke about is like literally happening in front of them. How do they position themselves? They're in some far out place in from Alaska to Australia somewhere to even remote places in Europe, all the way to South Africa.
Sydney, Australia is the most watched city on this channel.
Is that right?
At least that's the last.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm saying there's these people, but they're not represented well by their governments. Even their local pastors and communities don't always get Israel. Their neighbors don't understand Israel, but they're these people in the hundreds of thousands. And my question is to you guys, as rabbis, what do you see this nations? What is their position right now? As the world is going crazy, what would you say to them?
Well, I'll tell you, Ari and I, we host the Land of Israel Fellowship once a week, every Sunday, and people from all over the world come. And the step in the right direction is to become more biblical. They start taking what's called the Old Testament a little bit more seriously. They start becoming more Israel. They start becoming more biblical. They start living a little bit more like Judea and a little bit less like Rome. And they start actually uniting spiritually with the people of Israel. And so what does that mean? There's 10 commandments. Yeah. In the 10 commandments, there's we should really honor the Sabbath. Let's just give a moment to that. The seventh day is a special day. It doesn't mean you have to not go here or yes, do this or yes, do that. But it's saying that there's something to honor. It was God's special day. He made it, blessed it, and he made it holy. It's like taking steps to align more with the destiny of Israel, because you are not where you are physically, you are where you are spiritually, you are where your heart is, you are where your desire is, what you want. And if you want to align your destiny with Israel, the way to do that is to adopt more and more biblical lifestyles.
Well, so I think there's definitely truth to that. Isaiah 56, that's to me one of the most powerful of the prophecies. And it says, as for the foreigners who are joined to God, joined, meaning there's a certain actual coming together. We always say that we feel like not friends, but family. Yeah. That's what I mean by that. Who are joined to God to render service and to love God's name, to be devoted servants. All who keep the Sabbath and do not profane it. All who hold fast to my covenant. I will bring them to my sacred mount, El Har Kadshi, and let them rejoice in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and sacrifices shall be welcome on my altar, for my house should be called a house of prayer for all peoples. That is part of the general thing that Jeremy is talking about, that we see manifesting right now among the nations of the world. We see that happening, little sparks. Mike Huckabee would be an example of someone who would be in that category without a question, but also it really depends where you are. How are the Jews where you are suffering? How can you do where you are? What do you see in your eyes needs to be done from wherever you're at to stand with Israel and the Jewish people? Yes, pray for Israel, but speak up for Israel. Stand with Israel. And really the question is less for us and it's more for you guys.
No, and I would say it's not only for them, but they are the facilitators. You need to come to Israel. And the best way to come to Israel is to come through Hayovel. The best way to come is to bless the farmers of Israel, to volunteer here, to give your hands, to give your feet, to give your time, to give your resources, to actually come and rebuild the land. And I don't know any organization better than Hayovel to do it. So don't just pray for Israel and love Israel. Actually come to Israel when you can.
Right, and not only rebuild the land, but also it's very much, I've seen that people started off, they come on some sort of generic tour to Israel and they go to the garden of the this and all the different things, which I'm not saying are not a good thing to do. But then the next trip, they're like, there's something deeper that's not a thirst that's not being quenched. And what is it? It's really relationships. They want friendships. They want relationships. They want to start kindling a real brotherhood with Jews in the land of Israel and Judea. And that's a big part of what you guys are doing, is bringing together and really kindling these relationships.
There you go. You guys heard it. I think that's an encouragement for everybody out there watching, listening. We've always told people for years and years and years, you have to do something for Israel, do something for the Jewish people, right? And I think the biggest thing you can do is to come. And if you come during wartime, we've got 35 people coming on a trip next week. That's like bonus points, I think. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because tickets are, plane tickets are more expensive. You're obviously flying into a country that is at war. You're coming to Israel's biblical heartland, which a lot of people are absolutely terrified to come to, right? Although I just saw the statistics. There's more Israeli Jews killed by Israeli Arabs since October 7th than Palestinian Arabs, meaning
is that right?
Israel proper is actually potentially more dangerous than Judea and Samaria.
Well, there's just no difference between the jihad. That's what that's trying to teach us.
Right. There's no difference between not all, but like a lot of Israeli Arabs, Arabs from Judea and Samaria, right? Like you're saying,
they just have more access. They have more access. But you should not be worried about coming to Israel.
No,
you should be
100%.
worried about your departure date.
That's
Meaning
right.
that the prophet Zechariah says, "Ohalei Yehuda yishvu levetach," that the tents of Judea will dwell in safety. That it seems like we're the epicenter of all the conflict, the most scary place in the world to be. In reality, when you get here and you're walking the mountains here, you feel it. You can feel that this is actually the safest place to be. It's the return ticket that would make me nervous.
You're exactly right. When people get here, it's like, there's holiness to this land. And I want to just say, as we wrap up this show, Luke, is that for people out there that want to be a part of blessing and serving Israel, this is, as we spoke about, this is not only a physical war that's facing the entire globe right now. This is a spiritual war as well. And maybe Jeremy's remarks to those of the nations to connect more to the biblical, just get a biblical foundation. Maybe that's the best way somebody individually could be a part of bringing redemption to this world. And I wouldn't say maybe. It is.
Yeah.
Get rooted in biblical context.
Zionism, yeah.
Connect to Zion, the place of all redemption, where it will come forth from. And that is how we fight what's happening in Gaza. That's how we fight the anti-Semitism that's covering the globe, the Jew hating that's covering the globe, the opposite of redemption and all of that's attacking the Jewish people. This historic thing. We've got enough in our back mirrors now to look back and say, okay, that's what we don't do. And now it's aligned with the Jewish people, the redemption that's coming. And so for all those of the nations, recognize, don't just look at the media.
2 phases.
Look at the spiritual redemption that's happening and be a part of that.
I've got 2 phases for anybody watching. You ready? Phase 1, join the Land of Israel Fellowship.
That's right.
At thelandofisrael.com. We'll put a link down below because that's something people can do from anywhere in the world. It's easy. It's simple. They join you guys on a private, virtual fellowship every single week to learn Bible from the Land of Israel and also supporting, the Land of Israel network in Judea. That's phase 1. Phase 2, sign up for one of our trips, serveisrael.com. We'll put that link down below as well. It doesn't matter. Wartime, peacetime, we run these trips and you're coming to the heartland of Israel. And every trip we go to the Our Goat Farms, right? So you get to meet Jeremy and Ari if you come on one of our trips too. So there you guys go. That's something you can do. Obviously, if you're in Texas this year, you got to come to the Israel Summit, June 9th through 11th. But guys, do something. And I think the biggest thing to realize is that the decision's probably going to get harder and harder because right now you can still kind of ride the fence and be pro-Israel. You can pray, you can give money, but it's going to get tougher. That decision is going to have more consequences as time goes on. And we're just here to encourage you to stand strong, continue standing with the Bible, God's people, God's land, God's kingdom. I think that's our encouragement for you today. Guys, as always, stop listening to the lies and propaganda and connect with the truth of what's happening here in the Land of Israel. We'll be back next week here at the Land of Israel Fellowship, or Land of Israel Network and the Israel Guys.